Hi everyone, Don Smith here, and today I want to teach you a little bit about setting white and black points in an image, excuse me, to help bring the contrast out of an image. And I get this a lot from students in my workshop that literally they will see a scene and they will say, well, I don't know if I can really photograph that because that's very flat light that I'm looking at. And what I try to teach them is, granted that what we see literally and what we want to process artistically can be two different things. So the great Ansel Adams used to say he would look at a scene, but then he coined the term pre-visualization. He would pre-visualize in his mind how he wanted that scene to look once it was processed. And he would go about capturing the image and processing the negative in such a way that when he printed, he could change the contrast grade, and by burning and dodging, he could bring out his artistic or his pre-visualized vision of the image. I've just returned from a workshop out in White Sands, New Mexico, which is just a gem of a park. It's not a national park, it is a national monument. And this was actually a scene from the first night into the park. I got there a couple of days early with my assistant instructor, Pierre Steenberg, and we went out onto the dunes. Pierre had never been there, and I wanted to just get him familiarized with the dunes. And we went deep into the park in the area where they call the large dunes. You're getting out of excuse me, most of the vegetation, and it's just dunes of gypsum sand for as far as the eye can see. And as you see here, this is a raw file. We had kind of a stormy day going. This was probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. Sunset was still a couple of hours out, but this is what we would term flat light. And if you look up here in the histogram, you would see that there's really nothing over in this area here where the dark shadows would be, and then nothing over in here where bright highlights would be. So I get asked the question all the time, Don, do I set highlights and shadows and make this a bit more contrasty? What do I do? And really, it's your artistic call. But I can tell you for the most part, and you can see again the data mass here, we don't have a whole lot to work with. We're going to go ahead and stretch it. So I'm going to come here into the develop module. And the first thing that I do is I always come down to these whites and black sliders. Now I'm in the basic module. So if you close this up, you will see I'm in basic. And all I'm going to do is hold the Alt or Option key, depending on if you're a Mac or a PC. And I'm just going to slide this way over to the right until I start to see a little bit of color come in. And then I'm going to back it off. And right now I'm at plus 86. Now you start to notice, wow, that really kind of blew the highlights. But just sort of hang with me here. We're going to go through this. And next step we're going to do is we're going to set the black. So I'm going to pull that down to a minus. And we're going to keep going until we just start to see there in the bottom right, you start to see a little bit of black come in, and I'm going to back it off, and that is obviously these plants. Now, it's starting to look really terrible, right? Okay, but we're not done with things. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this highlight slider, and I'm going to turn it all the way down. Just come down 100 points on the highlights. And next, I'm going to bring my shadows down a bit too. Just about down in there, somewhere about that area. Now I'm going to just shift the whole exposure down. Just start pulling down, and now you're starting to see this picture really start to come to life with some contrast. I'm going to come back. We're going to reset this white point just a little bit here. Whoops, right about there. And we're going to check our black point. We're going to come down a little bit more. All right, and I can back that exposure down even a little bit more, right about there. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to check my color temperature. I always tell my students that what we're changing here is just basically the underlying black and white of this photo. And when you change tonality, it changes color. So I never come up here and touch my color first. I always wait till I change my tonality And then I come in and I just want to back that color down just a little bit, maybe about, right around the 5,000 mark. And that starts to bring the proper color into the sand that my eyes saw. Okay, so now we can see it's still a little bit on the light side, and this time I'm going to come into the tone curve. I really love the tone curve, and I really just hope that Adobe leaves this in here for me. This is why I'm going to come in. Let me back up here for a second. You have two choices on the tone curve, and if you come over to this little icon here on the right, you can come into what we call the linear tone curve. And if you have been working with Photoshop for quite a number of years, I think you'd be very proficient at this. But I'm going to click here and bring up what we call the parametric tone curve. And what I want to do is, as I hold my mouse over various, like the highlights and the lights, you start to see in the tone curve where it's going to be affected. I want to take the lights of all of this sand and bring it down a little. Let me come back up to basic. I've already knocked my highlights down 100. So I'm going to bring them down even further now by using the tone curve. And we're just going to back them down until things start to look about the range that I think we should get it. And I could really come down all the way to about 100 here. Things are starting to look really good now. All right, detail. I kind of have a starting point of 40 on the amount. My radius, I start at 1 and detail at 50. Now this is going to change based on whatever photograph you're working on. So there's not really a hard and fast set of rules here. But one thing I do want to do is I never want to apply sharpening up in the sky or anything soft. So I'm going to take my masking tool and I'm going to slide it over, and anything that's white is now getting the sharpening applied, and anything that's black is being deducted. There is no sharpening. Also at this point, I'm going to come up here and check for dust. So I'm going to click on the tone or on the right here on the clone tool. And then under the picture, the bottom left, there's this little visualize spots, and I'm going to put a check mark in there. And now it just kind of brings up all these little knobs that you see. These are all just dust spots, and I'm going to go through as best I can. And left and right bracket, you can raise or lower the clone tool. I'm going to do this kind of fast. I'm not going to be able to get all of these out right now, but we're just going to come through, and you can see that I do have kind of a dirty sensor. That was really just from changing lenses out on the dunes. It was kind of a windy night. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good there. So I'm going to go ahead and come to the bottom right and click Done. And lens correction, I was using my Sony a7R II, and I was using a Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter sports lens. Great lens. So I'm just going to click that. And I'm also going to come in here under highlight priority and just take a bit of, I'm just going to add a bit of vignetting here, not much. And I'm going to take a look at my dehaze, and this will just kind of give me a little more pop of contrast here. Very, very subtle with these controls. Okay, so let's now hit the backslash key, and that's where we started. That's where we ended up. And then I would go through Photoshop, and I would continue on through On1 and do all my processing. And when it was said and done, I want to come to the next picture. This was my, we'll let the resolution build in. There we go. This was my finished image of the scene. So as you can see, setting whites and black points and then massaging the midtones and really using this tone curve to kind of take down even more highlight effect is really kind of a great combination. And then you just go on through and finish out your processing. If you would like to learn more about my processing, I do have videos available on my website, and just go to www.donsmithphotography.com and click on the link to workflow videos, and you'll see what I have to offer. It's about a 6-hour course, my current one, Simplified Method to Workflow Processing, that I sell for $39.99. And I think I can really help you with your processing that will be repeated, where you can get great results over and over again. So thanks for watching the video. I hope this helped you out. Remember to go check your white and black points. And one other thing, if you are using third-party plugins throughout your processing, always route back into Lightroom or go to Adobe Camera Raw. And when you're all said and done, just double check that those white and black points haven't moved on you, and you'll be able to make fantastic prints and display web pictures that you'll be proud of. So until next time, we will talk to you later.